Welcome back to Fast Market. I'm Alex Coffey alongside Kevin Hinks. Now time for our cash tag segment. Joining us here in studio is TD Ameritrade Network contributor Jenny Horn. From LikeFolio.com, the VP of Research, Megan Brantley, is with us here on this Friday morning. Guys, we're going to talk Upwork. And you know, many may not be familiar with this one, and if they aren't, I think it's a good chance to showcase one of the features on the Thinkorswim platform. If you go underneath Analyze and Fundamentals, Jenny, it gives you a brief description of what each company does on there. But basically, to sum it up, it's an online employment marketplace that really is tied to freelance labor, and we've seen this really grow substantially in terms of this desired type of work for many because of the flexibility that it offers, and it allows those to work on tasks and jobs that they may find an interest in as opposed to just taking a job or a career at a bigger employer.
I think that's a really good point too, because I think we see sort of headlines every single day about how the workforce is sort of evolving and changing, and I think that these trends are actually some that are here to stay because a lot of people say, hey, I'd actually take a pay cut if I could continue to work from home. We actually saw that with a lot of Apple employees. And I think a lot of people are now saying, hey, I enjoy this more flexible work schedule. I don't have to be in an office 9 to 5 every day. And this freelance economy has sort of risen to, interest. And it's one that's always been around. But I think this helps, the pandemic actually helps sort of emerge it. And now I think that this is something that people can say, hey, I can work from a different location that isn't my home. I can travel more. I can, see my family more. And I can completely understand why that has lasting effects, and that I think is one trend that is really here to stay from the pandemic. But I joked, I think the last time we talked about this, I really had never heard of Upwork, which is shameful because it is the world's largest work marketplace for freelancing and gigs. And what that means is the largest and the biggest transactions within the gig economy often occur at Upwork. So this is a pretty major company. It has freelancers in over 180 countries and has over 50% of the Fortune 500 companies, with big players like Microsoft and Airbnb. And I mentioned how this is sort of an evolving trend that's here to stay, but the freelance economy is expected to really continue to grow. Back in 2019, it was valued at about $3.4 billion, and it's forecasted to grow about 15% annually over the next 5 years. So that healthy level of growth, I think, is something to consider when talking about Upwork. Plus, there's sort of a degree of stickiness with their product. They actually hit a record high of client spend retention of about 130% earlier this year. And as of the second quarter, this number is at about 115%, which is significantly higher than a year ago. So some of these metrics I think are important to keep in mind when you consider really the way this company can continue to run. Now, it has been sort of boring so far from a stock perspective in 2021, but Needham actually issued a pretty bullish note on the company recently, saying that its gross services volume stands at about $2.5 billion, and Needham highlighted that this just barely taps what they believe is a total addressable market of about $1.3 trillion. So that is a massive, amount of money, and that fact that Needham believes that they really haven't tapped into that yet is huge. And in this report, they also highlighted that really we're in these very early stages of digitalization and sort of finding virtual talent, which I thought was something worth noting because it's really a concept that, again, I mentioned has been around, but I don't really think has ever been as important as it is right now. And as far as social media, this company actually gets a ton of love. I was shocked. I have to say that I looked at this name up thinking I wouldn't find anything, and I didn't really see much from a stock perspective, but from people actually really enjoying their experiences on Upwork, I found so many tweets. So that brings me to our first tweet of the day, which says, if you're new to freelancing or independent contract work, don't sleep on Upwork. You can find some long-term, high-paying clients on there. It's just a matter of knowing how to pitch and filter your search results. So, Megan, last time we talked to you all, I said I didn't know what this company was, and I think Landon gave me grief because he was like, this is a major company. So now I've been doing some research. I understand this company, and I'm always amazed every time we talk about this name, really how positively people perceive it on Twitter. And just it seems like this is a great company from a user experience.
Yeah, I think that you really picked up on a key point. Upwork has some of the highest consumer happiness in our coverage universe. It's 84% positive. And so, that's extremely high. That's about 6 points higher than it was last year. And it's also about 6 points higher than its competitor Fiverr. And so this is one of those things where we kind of agree with that tweet that you pitched where she was talking about that, maybe, don't sleep on Upwork as a platform. We think that maybe the street is sleeping on Upwork a little bit as a company because according to our data, they're really still growing, and that may be unexpected. When we look at total mentions, which these are mentions from freelancers who are, freelancing on Upwork, and then also, businesses just like us at LikeFolio who are using Upwork talent, these are up about 23% year over year. So this isn't one of those scenarios where a lot of times these charts that we show you guys, we call it looks like a shark fin, where you see this huge, almost triangle, rapid acceleration adoption that was this pull forward effect brought on by COVID, and then some normalization. But with Upwork, we see this continued and sustained growth. So the fact that they're still able to build and they're still growing and they're obviously retaining these users, I think is a really positive note for a long-term outlook.
Megan, when I read about Jenny, I was kind of in your camp, is reading about this company for the first time. You really start to get a picture for what they do and how effective they are and the happiness of the people that use this company. But here comes the but. Megan, do they get pulled in to, remember, when you talk about freelancers, you're also talking about gig workers, you're also talking about independent contractors. Does this company get pulled in with all the news with Uber and Lyft about lawsuits, and do they have risk in terms of states demanding that companies like Uber and Lyft employ their people and give benefits? I mean, the use of the independent contractor is one of the key aspects of business to keep expenses down and allow people freedom to work when they want. Does this company run into some of those problems where regulators or legislators could threaten their business?
We haven't seen that come up with Upwork. And even whenever we listen to these freelancers who are talking about their experience with Upwork, they report a very positive experience, a very fair experience. I think that Upwork is a little bit of a different scenario versus an Uber or a Lyft in that regard. And we're definitely not seeing it in our data. Whenever, this chart, these are mentions of people who are hiring freelancers. I think that this really just demonstrates that this is something that companies are increasingly receptive to. I think companies appreciate that there's a note of flexibility in regard to, what you need talent for, what you need help with working on different projects for. And there's also an openness to this idea of remote work. That's something that, COVID did cement this long-term outlook of, I think more and more people are more open to these types of remote workers. I know just anecdotally at LikeFolio, we work with a handful of remote workers and have been working with the same Upworkers for years. I work daily with an Upworker from Argentina. And the fact that this platform is able to, make it easier for us to conduct business, to have this talent that helps us with these different projects, and to make it also seamless on, the management side of things, I think is a positive sign, and definitely something, part of the reason why Upwork's sentiment is so high.
Megan, you talked about some of the economic upsides to maybe smaller businesses who don't have the luxury of maybe like an Apple or a Microsoft to hire maybe full-time software developers whenever they need projects done. This allows, the flexibility to increase staff and workers when needed, and then kind of pull back when they're not. So you can see the positives from the employer standpoint. On the other side, from the employee standpoint, it allows the flexibility. It allows, if Instagram and I'm sure TikTok are any indication of all the talk you see about side hustles and other income streams, you can see the upsides for the employee. So my question to you then, Megan, is this similar to the conversations that Kevin has had around dating apps, where kind of the singles bar that is the most busy is the one that wins? Is Upwork only going to get better as more and more participants join this service and platform?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that Upwork has around 12 million different freelancers on its platform, so you could definitely say it's busy. But I think that one thing it does really well, especially differentiating itself from other, freelance gig platforms like Fiverr, for example, is Upwork really facilitates these long-term contracts as well. So as where, with Fiverr, a lot of times you see people coming on just for one-off projects. You might work with a Fiverr designer for one project and then never work with them again. But with Upwork, these contracts can be really long-term. There are Upworkers who have worked with the same clients for years. And so I think that flexibility and that, that long-term relationship is a really sticky factor that helps Upwork, retain these high levels of client spend, like Jenny noted.
Yeah, and Megan, I looked at the comparison sort of Fiverr versus Upwork to try to understand, how they attract different customers. And I'm curious, just maybe even anecdotally, why you at LikeFolio use Upwork over a Fiverr, because I sort of got that Fiverr usually attracts maybe a smaller company, but you all being a small company still use Upwork, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, anecdotally, we use Fiverr and Upwork. I think we use Fiverr a lot of times for just, quick one-offs, design projects. It's really heavily based in design. But with Upwork, these are long-term relationships that we've developed with these freelancers that get really specialized in what we do, but want flexibility. And, maybe there's some fluctuations in the different projects that we have going on as a growing business. And so it's really kind of two different use cases. So I don't think necessarily that they are mutually exclusive or that both can't coexist and still be successful and growing. But right now, we are seeing Upwork significantly outperform Fiverr, and we're seeing Upwork mentions grow at a much higher rate than I think the market expects. And so this is one of those divergence opportunities. And so that's why whenever we see things like this, it makes us really excited because, our data kind of gives us an edge that maybe the market isn't expecting.
Well said, Megan. Thanks as always for joining us. Have a great weekend. VP of Research at LikeFolio.com, Megan Brantley. Always a pleasure.